I've been talking to people who were fired from government by Trump and his people, and here is what they are warning is coming next. I was speaking to specifically the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau people, and a bunch of them that are technologists. These are people that were hired specifically from the private sector to create expertise inside the federal enforcement agency that was charged with protecting you from all of these technology amplified scams that are coming. And they told me three things in particular that I'll just tell you about that I think were really fascinating. The first was this question of whether or not this was done in the name of efficiency. And they pointed out that the budget for CFPB on an annual basis is about $823 million. Sounds like a lot, but that's actually very small compared to other agencies. And each year, on average, they've brought in $1.5 billion that they've won from these companies, which go directly back to consumers through a federal payout system, but they go back to consumers. So taken in just the simplest business terms of capitalism, that is a more than 40% profit margin. No business makes that kind of money. That's an insane profit margin. So with the small amount of money being spent and the enormous amount of money being brought back, this question of efficiency is ridiculous. In addition, these folks were sort of pointing out the people, you remember the billionaires who were all sort of on the dais at Trump's inauguration and you've got not just Elon Musk, but Mark Zuckerberg and Jeff Bezos and Sundar Pichai and the various heads of, all these folks that are the heads of these big tech companies. All of them have in some form or another come under the eye of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau in the last few years, especially because, as one technologist pointed out to me, all those people are trying to move into being financial companies, fintech finance kind of companies. Elon Musk and his X platform, he wants it to be an all-in-one payment platform in addition to everything else. So you have to begin, right? He began his career at PayPal, right? That's his first big success. And in January, he had just struck a deal with Visa to try and become this kind of, payments platform. And all those other folks have in some form or another been moving into that in some way. And it had gotten to such that, for years, and I've talked about this before, for years, people in Silicon Valley have rolled their eyes at the idea of Washington people getting involved as regulators because they say, they don't know anything about it. And they would always talk about Orrin Hatch's famous questioning of Mark Zuckerberg back in the day where he said, but how do you make money if your product is free? And Zuckerberg says, Senator, we run ads, and then everybody laughs. That sort of grandfatherly lack of understanding of tech, that's all over with. The people who are in these kinds of roles now are very smart. And this bureau in particular was put together to be this kind of sophisticated agency. And the people that I spoke to come from academia, they come from tech companies. These are folks that really know what they are talking about and are tasked with, looking to the future and figuring out the ways in which you and I are going to get scammed. So as one of them put it to me, there are, all of these companies are in some way moving into a world in which they were going to be under CFPB's remit. And especially for someone like Elon Musk, doing away with CFPB means he doesn't have to think about the regulations that would come his way because of this. And then the third thing, and this is the big one I want to talk about, is what they say is coming without a cop on the beat, right? Because obviously the efficiency argument is crap. Like, that's not why this one's being attacked. And these technologists specifically who know what they're talking about are being fired. Lawyers and technologists. And so, one has to assume that it is because the powers that be don't like the idea of a Consumer Financial Protection Bureau that specifically is the people's lawyer and the people's investigator when it comes to scams and your, finances being mucked with in some way. So so if we can assume that these folks are pulling trying to pull that place down because they don't want that in the world, and not for efficiency reasons, then we can assume, right, that they're going to continue to try and take it down, really try and destroy it. And if that's the case, here are the implications. So they rattled off a bunch of them. And the broad summary of this, as one of them put it, and this was the title of the piece that I wrote at theripcurrent.com about this, is "Good luck waiting on hold, America." So the sort of bottom rung is customer service. Right now, as these technologists pointed out to me, you have companies already that are willing to, lose you as a customer rather than deal with a customer service complaint. There are all sorts of businesses that are like that right now. And if there's instead a mistake, right, or something in which you cannot get out of being a customer, you have a subscription that you cannot cancel, or a mistake in charge you can't get them to answer to. If they know, if they're already willing to lose you as a customer, they're willing to keep you erroneously as a customer. This is according to these folks. And because of the data that companies will more and more be able to collect, because CFPB won't be regulating that, and presumably the same kind of pressure is going to come down on the Federal Trade Commission, which has been trying to fight against this stuff. Lena Khan, the head of that, has been replaced by somebody who really disagrees with the whole sort of, existence of FTC. So anyway, the data that these companies are going to gather is going to put them in a position to analyze the kind, sort of what the line is past which you won't take anymore, and push you right up against that line. Maybe even beyond it if they think that they can get away with it, because without a CFPB around to collect big amounts of money, and these are the guys that sued, for instance, Zelle. So this brings me to the next one. Zelle got sued. It's jointly operated by 7 banks, including Wells Fargo, Bank of America. Zelle got sued because so many scams were happening on that platform that the CFPB basically said, you haven't done an adequate job of warning people about these scams. And today, when you use Zelle, before you send a payment, I just did this the other day in paying my tattoo artist, it says, watch out for this kind of scam and the puppy scam. And, they are now informing you about all kinds of scams that you might fall prey to using their platform. There was no pressure on them to do that unless CFPB came along, right? Or at least that's the big regulatory pressure that they faced, and they were sued about this by CFPB. So scams is the other big one, right? Is that you're going to have more and more and more companies with collecting enormous amounts of data, having data breaches for which they won't be held with any kind of, they won't have any kind of liability for that, and then you get scammed in all kinds of new ways as, AI empowered hucksters figure out all kinds of phishing scams and ways of impersonating you and all that kind of stuff. The other big one is mortgage servicers. So right now, if you are lucky enough to own a house, the servicer, the company that holds that mortgage, you are randomly assigned that mortgage servicer, and they very often, they more often than is acceptable, make mistakes about how much you've paid, what the terms are of the payment, what your rate is, that kind of stuff. And right now, there really isn't an easy way to figure out that that's been the case, or to get any kind of redress on it, because you're randomly assigned. You don't have any choice. You're not walking away from this mortgage servicer. They are the one randomly assigned to you. And so the CFPB has been the only thing that has been an enforcement body around that. And then the other one, and this, is for millions of people, is student loans. So your student loan providers have in the past come up with tricky ways of fooling you into paying them more money while not making a difference on the principal, not being able to pay down the student loan. So diverting the money that you had been paying into your student loan to paying sort of random ass fees from this company. And this is a thing that CFPB has looked at and, made a big deal about it. Again, this is sort of, they're the people's lawyer and the people's regulator when it comes to this stuff. And so without them, who knows what your credit card, point system could look like, or how your student loan might go, or the rest of that stuff. It's just, there won't be the kind of stick that you need over so many of these companies to get them to do the right thing around this stuff. And that's all not even including the other thing that these guys mentioned, which is just how sensitive this data is, that if Elon Musk is collecting it, he could, what he could do with that data. It's not so much that he's, going to spy on you. He's been able to do that through PayPal for years, but like it has to do with the ability to be competitive with other companies. Companies voluntarily or under court order give CFPB incredibly confidential data about themselves. And these are financial companies very often that are doing this. So when they do that, they're giving away their source code, they're giving away their internal communications, they're giving away their strategic plans for years or decades in the future. All of that in the wrong hands, especially in the hands of somebody who, as I've mentioned, back in January, really made moves toward being a payment platform, could really use that to lock in a real advantage for themselves. So between the totally crap argument about it being an inefficient bureau, that's not true. The clear suggestion that it is a company that, a bureau that big companies don't want around, and certainly somebody like Elon Musk doesn't want around. The danger to your personal finances and the danger to just competition in America, it makes that particular bureau, all of these bureaus and all of this ransacking is alarming. But this one is really tough, I think, especially because it really was, as a tech journalist, the one that I was really putting my hope in. I really, thought that this was sort of the regulator that was trying to do it right. And these are not, by the way, political people. According to many of the technologists I spoke to, they don't talk about politics in the office. They very often disagree entirely about politics. What they agree on is that people shouldn't get screwed. That was their mission, and that mission is very much now in danger.